I don't think I'm gonna stream. No.
No?
So tonight is not just a night. It's a wound. It's a wound that still bleeds silently but persistently. Tisha B'Av is the day on the Jewish calendar that we sit with our brokenness. Now, in Judaism, we don't wallow in our brokenness, but what we do is we bear witness. And part of this experience is to witness. The power of witnessing is to be able to see someone else's experience, and then you can try to find inward. To be able to go inward is a very difficult process. But by witnessing someone else, it gives you the ability to look at yourself. We can't see ourselves otherwise. The rabbis, the sages say that whoever mourns for Jerusalem one day will rejoice in her rebuilding. And so part of our hope and part of our wish is that we don't, again, wallow in the mourning, but rather we look at the mourning as this process of rebuilding. And this has been the hope and the dream and the wish of the Jewish people for thousands of years. As we've done this wherever we've been, we've marked this day and this moment. My opening question tonight is, what does it mean to mourn? Mourning means to remember. One of the interesting thoughts that I had today was this idea of meditation. Meditation is the process of thinking about something to the point where you feel it. There are many different types of meditations in our lives. There are many experiences that we have where we think about it and we feel something. For example, resentment. There are some people who have done us wrong and we think about them and all of a sudden something boils up within us. That's a meditation. There's an experience that happened to us, maybe a trauma that we think about, and all of a sudden it boils up within us. We can't help it. Something happens. We get triggered. That's a meditation. And so part of this process for us is a meditation. To be a Jew during the time of the destruction of a temple was going from the greatest moments in Jewish history to the saddest overnight. People that attempted to reconcile that had a very difficult time, and there's stories in the Talmud and there's stories in various writings about people and that challenge of being able to live with both of those truths at the same time. And so tonight we mourn. Tonight we remember. Tonight we try to feel what that remembrance feels like. So I'm inviting you to slow down, to soften. We sit low as part of that remembrance process. It's not a performance. It's a holding. And each one of us brings with us not just a candle, but the candle of our soul. The soul is considered a candle as it's constantly trying to rise higher by trying to be connected to the body. What's beautiful about a conversation, and we're going to have this conversation a little later, is one of the great questions, one of the great theological questions of whether darkness is a creation or it's the absence of light. When we mourn during a sadness, does it really exist or is it just the absence of light? And we'll have that conversation later. Tonight we're going to read Megillat Eicha. We're going to read it in Hebrew. I will not be interrupting the Megillah. I will just announce page numbers for you or chapter numbers. So we're going to use this particular. So if you have this one, you'll get page numbers in this particular Eicha that we're using. And if you don't have it, it's in the chat and you can download it. The Eicha is the cries, is the poems of the prophet Jeremiah. Words that are soaked in pain, a longing, a brutal truth. You're welcome to read it along in English. We have the Steinsaltz edition in his translation. Or you can just listen to Rabbi Yosh and allow that rhythm of the Hebrew wash over you like waves. Let the silence between the verses, as per tradition, is to have silence between various verses, to be able to say to you and be able to help you reflect and see that which the words cannot see. And after we're done, we're going to share some stories, some reflections, memories of Jerusalem, memories of exile, of hope, of Mashiach, of rebuilding. And through that process, through that witnessing, I'm hoping that you'll be able to reflect. You'll be able to sit with it all. And if you brought a story or a poem, I want you to hold it, and we're hoping that we'll be able to get to that and be able to have a conversation. So with that, let us begin. We're going to open up Megillat Eicha. Before we do Megillat Eicha, as per tradition of Friday night, we're going to, Friday night, of Saturday night, since this very special setup, but we don't do Havdalah, but we are going to do the bracha on the Eish, on the Havdalah candle.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei morei ha'esh.
Amen.
Got the water. It's burning wax. And then blow it out. Yeah, that's how
Okay, chapter 1, Megillat Eicha.
Eicha yashva v'dod ha'ir Rabbasiyam ha'isaf yalmanam Rabasi bagoyim sarasi bamdinois ha'isaf lamas B'achoi sivke v'lai lavdi masal lefeya ein la menachem mikol oihaveha Kol re'eha bagduva hayula loivim Kalsa Yehuda me'ayni u'meroi v'avoda Hi yashva b'goyim loy matzav ma'anoyach Kol rodfea hisigua bein hametzarim Darchei tzion avelois Mibli ba'e moyed Kol she'areha shoivimim Kohaneha nenachim Suloi se'anu gois v'hi marla Hayud tzareh l'roi shoiveh shalu Ki Adonai haigal roi pesheha Olaleha halchu shavi lifnei tzar Vayetze batzion kol hadara Hayu sareha ke'ayalim loi matzu mireh Hayilchu v'loi koyak lifnei roidef Zachra Yerushalayim Yimei Anya Umerudeha Kol Mahmudeha Asher Hayu Mimei Keden Binfol Ama Biadzar Vein Oizerla Ra'u Atzarim Sachaku Al Mishbateha Peit Chata Yerushalayim Al Ken Lenida Hayasa Kol Mechavdeha Hizilu Hakira Uervasa Gam hinencha v'tashev achor Tumasa v'shuleha lo yizafra Acharisa v'teret ploim ein menachem la Re'eh Adonai esani ki higdil oyev Yadoi parashtar al kol machmadeha Ki rasa goyim ba'u mikdasha Asher tzivisa lo yavou v'kahalach Kol haman enachim mivakshim lachem nasnu מחמודיהם באוכל להשיב נפש. מחמדיהם באוכל להשיב נפש. ראה אדוני ואהביתה כי הייסי זה לעולם. לא יעליכם ולב לדרך, הביטורו אם יש מחויב כמחויבי, אשר עולה לי, אשר הגה אדוני, ביום חרון אפוי. ממרום שלח אש בעצמוסי וירדנה, פרס רשס לרגלי, השיבני אחור, נסנני שוממה כל היום דלה, נזכד על פשעי בידוי. הסתרגו עלו על צווארי של כוחי, נשנני אדוני בידי לא אוכל קום. סילה כל אבירי אדוני בקרבי, קרא עלי, מועד לשבור בחורי. כעס טרח אדוני לפסולס פס יהודה, על אלה אני ויחיה. עיני ירד מים, כי רחק ממני מנחם משיב נפשי. היו בני שממים כי גבר אויב, פרסת ציון בידיה, אין מנחם לה. ציווה אדוני ליעקב ציווה צריו, הישא ירושלים לנידה ביניהם. צדיקו אדוני כפיהו מריסי, שימונה כל העמים, וראו מחויבי, לצולסי ובחורי, הלכו בשבי. קרסי למאהבי המה רימוני, כהני וזקני, בעיר גבהו, כי ביקשו איכל לעמוי, וישיבו את נפשם. ראה אדוני כי צר לי מאי חמרמרו, נהפך ליבי בקרבי, כי מרוי מריסי. מחוץ שכחה חרב, בבית כמוות, שמעו כי ננחה אני. אין מנחם לי, כל אויבי שמעו רעשי ששו, כי אתה עשיסה. בביס היום פרסה ויהיו כמוני, תבואי כל רסם לפניך ואוי לעולמי, כאשר עוללת לי על כל פשעי, כרבוי סנחויסי ולבי דבי.
Chapter 2.
איכה יאיב באפוי אדוני אספס ציון, השליך משמיים ארץ, תפארת ישראל, ולא יזכר אדום רגליו ביום אפוי. בילה אדוני לא יחמה, עז כל מאויס יעקב, הרס בברסוי, מבצרי בסעודה הגיע לארץ. הלל ממלכה ושריה, גדה בחרייו. כל קרן ישראל השיבה אחור ימינו מפני אויב, ויבר ביעקב כאש להבה, אכלה סביב. דרך קשתוי כאויב, ניצב ימינו כצר, ויהרג כל מחמדי עין, אוהל בס ציון, שפך כאש חמסוי. היה אדוני כאויב בילה ישראל, בילה כל ארמונותיה, שיחס מבצריו. וירב בבס יהודה תעניה ועניה. ויחמוס כגן סוכוי שיחס מועדוי, שיקח אדוני בציון מועד ושבס, וינעץ בזם אפוי מלך וכהן. זנח אדוני מזבחוי ניר מקדשוי, הסגיר ביד אויב, חמוס ארמונותיה, כל נשנו בית אדוני כיום מועד. חשב אדוני להשריז חמאס בציון, נתקב והשיב ידו מבעליה, ויעבל חיל וחומה יחדיו אומללו. טבעו בארץ שעריה, איבד ושיבר בריחיה, מלכה ושריה בגויים אין תורה, גם נביאיה לא מצאו חזון אדוני. ישו לארץ ידמו זקני בת ציון, העלו עפר על ראשם, חגרו שקים, הורידו לארץ ראשן בסולוס ירושלים. כלו בדמעות עיני, חמרמרו מאי, נשפך לארץ כבדי, על שבר בשמי, בעטף עולל ויונק ברחבוס קריה. למויסם יאמרו, איה דגן ויין, והיסעטפם כחלל ברחובות עיר, וישתפך נפשם אל חיק אמויסם. מה עידך, מה עד המלך, הבס ירושלים, מה אשווה לך, ואנחמך בסולס בס ציון, כי גדול קיים שברי מי ירפא לך. נביאייך חזו לך שב וספל, ולא יגילו על עוונך, והשיב שוסך, ויחזו לך מסעוס שב ומדוכים. ספקו עלייך כפיים כל עוברי דרך, שרקו ויניעו ראשם על בס ירושלים, עזויס העיר. שיאמרו כלילס יפי, מסעוס לכל הארץ, פצו עלייך פיהם כל אויבייך, שרקו ויחרקו שאין, אמרו בלענו, אך זה היום שקיווינו ומצאנו ראינו, עשה אדוני אשר זמם, ביצע אמרסו אשר ציווה מימי קדם, הרס ולא יחמל, וישמח עלייך אייב, הרים קרן צרייך, צעק ליבם אל אדוני, חמס בס ציון, הורידי כנחל דמעה יומם ולילה, אל תתני פוגס לך, אל תדום בס עינך. קומי ראיני בלילה, לראש אשבורויס, שפכי כמים ליבך, נוכח פני אדוני. שאי אליו כפייך, על נפש אוי ללייך, עטופים ברב בראש כל חוצויס. ראה אדוני והביטה, למי עוללת כה. אם תאכל לנשים פריים, אוי ללי טיפוחים, אם יהרג במקדש אדוני כהן ונביא. שכבו לארץ חוצויס נער וזקן, וסולסי ובחורי נפלו בחרב. הרגת ביום אפך, טבחת לא חמלת, תקרא כיום מועד מגוריים מסביב. ולא היה ביום מלך אדוני פליט ושריד, אשר טיפחתי וריביסי, אויבי כלם.
Perek Gimel, Chapter 3.
אני הגבר העני בשבט אברסוי, אויסי נהג, ואביו לך חושך ולא אור. אך בי אשוב, יהפוך ידוי כל היום, בילה בשרי ואורי, שיבר עצמו יסי, בנה עלי, ויקף ראש וסלה, במחשכים הושיבני כמסי עולם, גדר בדי, ולא יצא הכביד, נחשתי, גם כי אזעק ואשביה, ששם תלסי, גדר דרכי בגזיס, נסיבי סייבה, דויב עורב הוא לי, ארי במסתרים, רחי סורר, ויפש חיני סמני שומם, דרך קשתוי ויציבני כמטרה לחץ, הביא בכליוי סי בני אשפסוי, הייסי שחק לכל עמי, ניגין אסם כל היום. הסביעני במרורים, הרבני לנה. ויגרס בחצס שיני, הכפישני באפר, ותזנח משלום נפשי סיטובה. ואמר עבד נצחי, וסויכלתי לאדוני, זכרני ומרודי לנה וראש, זכור תזכור, ותסויח עלי נפשי, זוי סשיב אל ליבי, על כן אכיל, חסדי אדוני כי לא ישמנו, כי לא יכלו רחמיו, חדשים לבקרים רבה אמונתך, חלקי אדוני אמרה נפשי, על כן אכיל לוי, טוב אדוני לקרביו, לנפש תדרשנו, טוב יאכיל ודומם לתשועס אדוני, טוב לגבר כי שאול בנעוריו, ישב בדד וידום כי נטל עליו, ייתן בעפר פיהו אולי יש תקווה, ייתן למכהו לכי יסבע בחרפה, כי לא יזנח לעולם אדוני, כי אם הגה וריחם קרב חסדיו. Hiloi ina milivoi vayage bnei ish. Ledake tachas raglav kol asirei aretz. Latoish mishpat gaver neged pnei elyoin. Labeis adam beriboi Adonai lo ira. Mi ze'amar vatehi Adonai lo yitziva. Mi pi elyon lo yiseitze haraois vehatoiv. Ma yisoinen adam chai gever al chataav. Nach besad rachenu v'nach koira v'nashuva ad Adonai. Nisa levavenu el kapayim el bashamayim. Nachnu pashanu marinu ata loisalachta. Sakoisa ba'af vatid drefenu harakta loi chamalta. Sakoisa be'anan lach me'avor tfilah. Sechi umaois tesimeni b'kerav hamim. Patsu aleinu pihem kolivenu. Pachad v'pachas hayalanu hashes v'hashaver. Al gemayim tered eini al shever basami. Eini nigra v'lo sidme me'en hafugois. Ad yashkif ve'ire Adonai mishamayim. Eini olala lenafshi mikol b'nois iri. Teitzaduni katzipor oivai chinam. Samsu abor chayai vayadu even bi. Safu maim al roshi amarti nigzarti. Karasi shimcha dinai mibor tachtiois. Koili shamaita al talem oznecha. Larchasi l'shavasi. Karafta b'yom ekra eka, amarta altira, ravta Adonai, rivei nafshi ga'al tachayai, reis Adonai avasasi, shavta mishpati, raisa kol nikmasam, kol machshavesam li, shamaita kerbasam Adonai, kol machshavesam alai, sivsei kamai v'hegionam, alai kol hayom. Shivtam v'ki masam habita ani maniga man yinasam. Tashiv lahem gomul Adonai k'maaseh yedehem. Titen lahem miginas lev talas lahem. Tirdeif be'af shashmidei mitachas shmei Adonai.
Chapter 4, Perek Dalet.
Eicha yuam zahav yishne hakesem hatoiv tishtapechna avni kodesh berosh kol chutzois b'nei tzion hayekarim hamsulaim bapaz eicha nechshavu li nivlei cheres maseh yedei yotzer gam tanim tachaltzu shad heiniku gurehen basami le'achzar Ki kayinim bamidbar, davak v'shoin yoinei, kalchikoi batsama oilalim shalu lechem, oireis ein lahem, aichlim le'ma'adanim nashamu bachutzois, ha'emunim ale soila chibhu ashpasois, v'igdal avoin basami mechatas sedoim, Alfocha k'moy raga v'lo chalu v'yadayim. Zaku nezireha misheleg tzafu mechalav. Admu etzem mipninim sapir gizrasam. Chashak mishachor ta'aram loy nichru v'achutzois. Safar oiram al atzmam yavesh hayakaetz. Toivim hayu chalei cherev mechalei rav. Shehem yazubu Medukarim itunoi sadai yedei nashim rachmaniois bishlu yaldehen ayu levarois lamoi beshever basami hiladinais chamasoi shafak haroinapoi vayatseis eish betzioin vatoichal yesedoiseha lo he'eminu malchei eretz v'kol yoshvei sevel Ki avoid tsar ve'oyev v'sharei Yerushalayim. Mechatois nevieha avoinois kohaneha ashevchim b'kirba dam tzadikim. Na'u ivrim b'chutzois negoyalu badam b'loi yuchlu yigu bilvushehem. Suru tamein karu lamoy. Suru al tigau, kinatsu gamnau. Amru bagoyim lo yosifu lagur. Pnei Adonai chilkam lo yosif lehabitam. Pnei kohanim lo nasau. Uzkenim lo chananu. Odenu tichlana einenu el ezasenu havel. Etzipiasenu tzipinu el goy lo yoshia. Sadut seadenu mileches birchoisenu. Karav kitzenu malu yamenu kivat kitzenu. Kalim hayu rodfenu minishrei shamayim al hearim dilukanu amidbar arvulanu. Ruach Avinu Mashiach Adonai Nilkad Bishkesoisam Asher Amarnu B'tziloi Nichya Bagoyim Sisi B'simchi B'asedoim Yoishev Es Be'eretz Utz Gamalayich Ta'avar Kois Tishkari B'sisari Gamavoinech B'asioin Lo Yusif L'hag Loisech Hakar Avoinech B'asedoim Yila Al Chatoisayich.
Parakeh, chapter 5, the last chapter.
Zachor Adonai mehayalanu, habita ures karpasenu, nachlasenu nefa lezarim, batenu lenachrim, yesemim hayinu einav, imoisenu kalmanois, meimenu bekesef shasinu, eitzenu bimchir yavoyu. Al tzarenu nirdafnu, yaganu veloy gunachvanu. Mitzrayim nasanu yad, Ashur lisboya lachem. Avosenu chatu ve'enam, V'anachnu avonesehem savalnu, Avadim mashlubanu, Hoirek ein miadam, V'nafshenu navi lachmenu, Mipnei cherev hamidbar, Orenu kesanur nichmaru, Mipnei zalafois rav, Nashim b'tzion inu v'sulois be'arei Yehuda. Sarim bi'adam nislu pnei zikanim loy nedaru. Bachurim techoin nasau narim ba'etz kashalu. Zekenim mishar shavasu bachurim minigin asam. Shavas misois libenu nepach le'evil mechulenu. Nafla ateres reshenu oina lanu ki chatanu. Al zeh hayadave libenu al ele chashhu enenu. Al har tzion sheshamim shualim hilchu boy. Ata Adonai lo'elam teshev kisacha ledor vador. Lama lanetzach tishkachenu tazvenu la'orech yamenu. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva Kadesh yamenu kekedem Ki mois mastanu Katzafta aleinu ad me'od.
Repeat with me, with all of us together. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha V'nashuva Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Return us to you, Lord, and we will return. Renew our days as of old. The cries have been cried. The temple lies in ruins. And here we sit, lo, like the Jews in every generation, in the glow, in the memory, in the echo of loss. But inside, every loss is a seed of redemption. And so tonight isn't just about what was destroyed. It's about what is waiting to be rebuilt in our lives, in our hearts, in the world. And I want us to take a few moments as we look at the candles all around us to be able to sit with that, to think about destruction in the eyes of Rabbi Akiva as the first step of rebuilding. Throughout history, this day has been a day filled with tragedy. Also a day filled with survival. With every tragedy, there's survivors. A day filled with survival. The first tragedy happens in the year 2488. The 9th of Av is the day when the spies come back with the reports. Their job was to spy out the land to see how to conquer the land. Spies come back with a report that is shocking. We can't conquer the land. The giants are greater than us. In the eyes of the Talmud and Midrash, saying the giants are greater than God. The giants are greater than our God. And the Jewish people wept. They wept that day. It was the 9th of Av in the year 2488. Fast forward, the destruction of the first temple, the year 586, before the Common Era. The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar, and the people were exiled to Babylon, a nation broken. But within 70 years of that brokenness, they rebuilt. We rebuilt. Not just the walls of the temple, but also hope. And it was in Babylon that we started to write down the Torah, creating what is today the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, studied every day today. And even in exile, even in those moments, in that short-lived period of one generation, we could see the seeds of rebuilding within that destruction. The second temple was destroyed in the year 70, the Common Era. The Romans destroyed the second temple. Jerusalem burned. The way that is described, very vivid description of that era, of blood flowing in the streets of Jerusalem. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, smuggled out of Jerusalem in a coffin. The second temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai wants to speak to Vespasian. Jerusalem is under siege, not by the Romans, but by the Jews. He hides himself in a coffin, and his students carry him to the walls, trying to get out. They said, "How do you know that your teacher is dead?" He said, "We're carrying him to be buried outside the walls. So we're going to stab the coffin." They said, "You're going to stab the coffin. People are going to see you killing Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. It's not going to be a scene," and they let him go. Rabbi Yochanan gets to Vespasian. And Vespasian grants him 3 wishes through an amazing episode. And one of the wishes, he says to Vespasian, is, "Give me Yavne and its sages." Because even during that time, he understood the seeds of rebuilding. This has been the secret of the Jewish people since the beginning of time. If you go look all the way back to the story of going into Egypt, when Jacob goes into Egypt, he sends his son Yehuda ahead of him to build a yeshiva so that the moment he arrives, they can continue the process of the study of rebuilding. In that moment, when Rabbi Yochanan says to Vespasian, give me Yavne and its sages, the Talmud says that Rabbi Yochanan understood that you can burn the building, but you cannot burn the soul of a people. It's been the secret of who we are for generations. They may take us out physically, but they can never take out our soul. And so today when we sit in the candle of the soul, we sit within our souls. The Crusades. In the Middle Ages, Tisha B'Av became a memorial for the massacres of the entire Jewish communities across France and Germany. One woman, Mina of Worms, she wrote a chronicles. And she wrote in her chronicles that she dressed her children in white on Tisha B'Av. And she wrote there that if tonight we remember the flames of the temple, let us be dressed in the offerings of purity. To me, when you read this, it's not about spiritual despair. It's about spiritual resistance, understanding the secret, the expulsion, the decree of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492, that very decree that exiled the Jews from Spain, the golden center of Jewish life for centuries, was signed on Tisha B'Av. Rabbi Don Isaac Abarbanel, the chief rabbi and advisor to Queen Isabella, begged for the decree to be overturned. And when it wasn't, he led thousands into exile with the Torah in his hands. He took the Torah scrolls in their hand and they marched into exile out of Spain. That has been the secret. The Holocaust, while not aligned by date, many survivors connected their experiences, the soul of Tisha B'Av, even though the decree of the World War I, so the World War I did start on Tisha B'Av, and then that later led, obviously, to World War II and the Holocaust. In Auschwitz, there's stories of people whispering Eicha by memory. There's one survivor account from Bergen-Belsen that I read. The Tisha B'Av, he said, is when the barracks grew quiet. And you would hear it at night after a long day. You could hear in the barracks, Eicha Yashva Badar, a voice from memory, he said, would chant in the darkness. How she sits in solitude. This has been the story of our people. We haven't forgotten, even in the most difficult moments. And so here we are, 2025 in Montreal, still sitting low. 22 months experiencing in our lifetime what we only read in books, what we only heard from survivors. We too have now experienced this. But here we are once again, refusing to forget, refusing to be defined by our pain. In Judaism, Tisha B'Av is not memory, it's not history, it's memory. And memory isn't passive, it's active. It asks us a question. What are you remembering, and what are you remembering for? And so, like I started earlier, we can remember as a meditation, where we think about something and it conjures up an emotion. That's one type of memory. or we can remember to rebuild. We could remember to reconnect, we could remember to return. And so I want to take a moment here and hold this tension between pain and purpose, between what we've lost and what we're able to rebuild. If you're comfortable, and obviously everybody can take their own time, you don't have to share, but I would love to be able to create this circle and this space and the candle on Tisha B'Av, and to be able to share for those of us here in the room. And I'll offer a few prompts. My first prompt, and you can also, if you don't want to share it out loud, that's okay. You can also share it in your heart. If you're sitting in front of your computer there, you can write it on your computer, since you won't be able to speak in the room yet. My first prompt to you tonight is, what are you personally mourning this year? If anybody wants to say a few words, you're welcome. The invitation is yours. The floor is open. If anybody wants to write it in the chat, if you're here, you can write it in the chat and I'll read it out. You have what you're mourning? You have that in your heart? My next prompt for you is, what do you carry that still feels unhealed, unfinished? Because if you're going to spend time in mourning, if you're going to spend time in this space, then you also have an opportunity in this space to look at and to notice something that is unfinished, something that is unhealed. Once again, an invitation if anybody wants to say something, or you can just say it in your heart. Okay. My next prompt. What have you, how have you experienced exile? Not just physical, but emotional and spiritual. Here we are in exile. What does that mean to you? Physically, what does it mean to you emotionally? And what does it mean to you spiritually? My final prompt, which I'm going to hopefully this will be the prompt that will give you the ability to take the floor. Somebody can speak, because to me this is the most important prompt of this whole conversation within us. Is, to you, what does rebuilding look like in your life? What does rebuilding look like in your relationships, in your soul? When we think about rebuilding, what does that look like to you? Anyone? I want to talk about 3 Eichas. I mentioned this today as one of my potential sermons this morning. And so I want to share it with you tonight. One of the most famous of all of the Tisha B'Av moments was the Spanish Expulsion. In 1492, Tisha B'Av was the last day for Jews who didn't want to convert to Christianity to leave Spain. Most historians estimate that the number was between 40,000 and 100,000, and maybe even a larger number that remained in Spain that had no choice but to convert to Christianity. After the mass conversion, Spain had hundreds of thousands of people known as new Christians. They actually had a derogatory word that we don't use, but the derogatory word was Moranos. Among the Jewish people, they called each other Anusim, which meant those who lived under compulsion. Now, as you can imagine, the life for the conversos changed immeasurably. For centuries, dating back to the destruction of the Second Temple and even before, Jewish life revolved around the synagogue, around the temple, around the Jewish community. It was a togetherness. It was a cohesion. It was us being here together. That this is what's kept the Jewish people going through the most difficult times. Even in the barracks, in Auschwitz, they were together. Suddenly, everything moved underground. No more services in the synagogue. You couldn't go to synagogue for Tisha B'Av. You couldn't have a Jewish wedding. You couldn't have a bar mitzvah. You couldn't have a bris. Everything had to be done in secret. There are other times, many other times in Jewish history. This is not a unique story of the Jewish people. People wondered after the fall of Soviet Jewry and communism, the fall of communism, how Soviet Jewry, how there was all of a sudden in minutes, in days and weeks, there was this upspring of Jewish life, like as if it happened overnight, but it had been happening underground for years and years. They just took it from underground to the overground. So for the conversos, everything went underground. And being Jewish now became a focus mainly of the mitzvot you don't do instead of the mitzvot you do. I've always loved this. I'll just digress a moment. Sure, I'm digressing to explain what I mean. For a short period of time, I was a prison chaplain, and I spent time with prisoners in solitary confinement. Solitary confinement, no one should ever know what this is. It's an unbelievable, painful experience. The prisoner is literally what it is. You're locked in a cell alone with no connection. Maybe sometimes, depending on the prison, you get an hour a day where you can have a little bit of light and a little bit of to walk out. But most of the time, not even that. And so I was speaking to one prisoner in solitary confinement, and he was upset that he couldn't do any mitzvot. And I said to him, I want you to know that you do most of the mitzvot. He said, come on. Why are you trying to humor me? What do you mean that I do most of it? I do nothing. Nothing. Most of the time it's dark in my cell. I can do nothing. It's just me and my thoughts an entire day. I said, I know that you're doing nothing, and you're doing most of the mitzvot by doing nothing. You know, there's how many mitzvot? There's 613 commandments, and 248 are positive, and 365 are negative. So by doing nothing, you do all of the negative commandments, which is most of the mitzvot. And so this is what happened for the conversos, is being Jewish now became focused mainly on the mitzvot you don't do. Open Jewish observances were dangerous. Eating matzah on Passover or lighting Hanukkah candles could bring someone to receive a death penalty. Actually, during that time, to be burned publicly in the city square. And so they concentrated not on what you do, but they concentrated on what they didn't do. For example, there was the mitzvah of not eating pork. The mitzvah of not mixing milk and meat. I'm sorry for talking about food right now. Or not to eat chametz on Passover. That was what they did. They didn't. And this was had to be an active experience. The reason why they did that is because it's difficult to catch a person and punish them for what they didn't do. How are you going to prove the person didn't have pork or the person didn't eat chametz on Passover? Fasting, for example, was one of the commandments that the conversos were very careful to observe. Because again, it was relatively easy to accomplish in their circumstances. Especially, it could actually be interpreted as pious Christian behavior. Now, Yom Kippur came, the holiest day of the year, also the most important fast in the Jewish calendar. And on the list of priorities was the fast of Tisha B'Av. But I ask you this question. Which fast was the most important fast for the conversos? Was it Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, or Tisha B'Av? Actually, I know you know the answer. It was neither of them. It was another fast day. The fast that was most important for the conversos was the fast of Esther. According to some scholars, the fast of Esther was considered as important to them as Yom Kippur, and maybe even more so, because Esther was a role model for them. They saw Esther as their absolute role model. The scroll of Esther says that Mordechai commanded Esther not to reveal her people and her homeland. And during all those years that Esther lived in the king's palace, until the story of Purim, she lived as a converso, in hiding. She kept kosher by being a vegetarian. She avoided drinking their wine, so on and so forth. She held her own as a Jew, and in the end, she was the one who saved the entire Jewish people. And so for the converso, she became a figure of inspiration. Her image gave them strength to survive terrible struggles of their day-to-day life, where on the one hand, they had to attend church every Sunday, and on the other hand, they had to keep Judaism alive in their hearts. In fact, they became so attached to this fast that there were conversos who only fasted, not for one day, but they would do the Esther fast for 3 days and 3 nights, like the original fast that Esther had done with the Jews of Shushan. There's even evidence that a young converso woman from a very well-known family died as a result of fasting for 3 days. There's another reason why they all connected to Queen Esther. In public Jewish life, and in particular in the synagogue, men are more dominant in traditional Judaism. But when Judaism moved into the home, for the conversos, their Judaism wasn't in the synagogue anymore. The women became the leaders of Judaism during that time. Among the conversos, it was the mother and the grandmother who kept the Jewish spark alive for them. She was the one who kept the kosher kitchen without anyone realizing. She was the one who taught the children to recite the Shema Yisrael, the secret Jewish identifier among the conversos. You knew if somebody was Jewish if they knew the Shema Yisrael. It was one of the secrets that they had. That was how it was a secret password also for many of them, and during the places when they would have to go in hiding. She was the one who maintained the family purity. And so because Judaism became so home-centered, what was traditional, the traditionality, so to speak, of Judaism totally changed. And the men, I would say, were pushed aside to a certain extent. And the women were the ones who demonstrated the true self-sacrifice to preserve whatever little they could of Jewish tradition. And to this day, there are all kinds of South American countries that have a custom on Friday before sunset to go into the basement and light 2 candles and then cover them. I had met in my travels a South American family, a very random story. And I happened to be in the home in rural Montana on Friday night. It was very random. And they had in their living room a closet that they only opened Friday night, and they lit a candle in the closet. And she had no idea why. Her mother did it, her grandmother did it, her great-grandmother did it. She was from Argentina. And she said, I have no idea why, but this is our tradition. When they built the home. When they built the home, they said, my mother would just go in the closet and light the candle. But me, I wanted to honor my mother and my grandmother, so I built the closet in the living room. And it's a one closet, and it was just literally a little tiny closet, and she opens it up on Friday night, and she puts her candle there, and she lights it, and I was there. I saw it lit with the closet open. The admiration that the conversos had for Esther was so great, they would call her Santa Esther, which brings us to the story that I wanted to tell you, a more tragic part of the converso story. How many generations can preserve their identity in such a situation? So the first generation still remembered the synagogue. The first generation still remembered the prayers, the dancing on Simchat Torah. But in the second and third generation, a 3-year-old boy who goes to church with his parents every week, who learns about Christianity in school, it's the only world he knows. And even when they reveal to him at an older age that he's Jewish, as many conversos did, and even if he tries to connect in his own way with his Judaism, his frame of reference is Christianity. So when he wants to live with Queen Esther, he uses the terminology he knows best, Saint Esther. And after 3 or 4 generations, many conversos managed to escape Spain, and some of them immigrated to the Netherlands. The Netherlands was interesting during that time because it was one of the few European countries that maintained religious freedom and allowed Jews to live as they wished. And when they arrived there, it was very difficult for them to become accustomed to normative Jewish life. All their knowledge of Judaism just came from reading the Bible. But the Bible doesn't say anything about tefillin. It just says you should tie them on your hand and on your head. But the black boxes with straps hanging on both sides with something, it was something they'd never seen before. So he asked, what is that sheet that you're wrapping around your body? You see, what happened was these Jews got used to being Jewish in their hearts and focusing on interpersonal mitzvot, like they were a good person. But rituals like mezuzah, like lulav and etrog, like tefillin, like anything that was an actual ritual, as we know them today, were totally foreign to them. And as a result, this separated these communities. The community in the Netherlands was Ashkenazi. It was separate. And then there was what they called the Spanish and Portuguese community, which made up these converso Jews who fled the terror of the Inquisition in Spain and Portugal. And to this day, there is a famous Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in Amsterdam, which belongs to that community. That is the origin story of the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue. In that synagogue, maybe some of you have been there, the floor is made of sand. They did that to remind themselves of the time they had to gather quietly in basements and in cellars in Spain. There's no electricity, and the lighting is only with candles. There, hundreds or maybe even thousands of candles. You can go look online and see the pictures of the synagogue if you've never been there. It's unbelievable. It's thousands of candles that illuminate the synagogue, which is still active to this day. And so, as we read the scroll of Lamentations, as we read the Eicha written by the prophet Jeremiah, which describes the destruction of the first temple, it's called Eicha because of the first word of the scroll. The prophet laments right in the opening of the scroll that you read. How can it be that a city once teeming with people sits in isolation? Now, this is not the first time that the word Eicha appears in the Torah. And Jeremiah is not the first one to use this word. For example, today we read the portion of Devarim, and there's a word Eicha. There's actually a tradition that we start the Aliyah from the word Eicha because of Tisha B'Av. And what does Moshe say? He says, Eicha, oh, how shall I carry by myself your difficulties? An incredible story in Parshat Devarim. Moses, 5 weeks before his death, recounts what happened almost 40 years earlier to the generation about to enter the land of Israel. He tells them that he said, oh God, since the Jewish people are a massive nation, both in quantity and spiritual quality, how can I even, a holy man like Moses, lead such a great nation? The word Eicha is not only in the Torah. The word Eicha appeared in today's Haftorah. Chapter 1 of the book of Isaiah. Who's Isaiah? Isaiah lives 100 years before the destruction of the first temple. He sees a decline in the kingdom of Judah. And as a result of this spiritual denigration of the people, he reproves them for their behavior. He uses the word Eicha as this reproof. He says, how can it be that a faithful woman has become a harlot? He's using it as a metaphor. He says, he's reproving the people of Israel, saying that in Jerusalem that was once filled with righteous judgment was now rife with murderers And he goes on, this terrible story. And he warns them of the future, that if they continue down this path, what will come. The Midrash says the three prophesied in terms of Eicha: Moses, Isaiah, and Jeremiah. Three Eichas. Rabbi Levi said a parable. He said a noble woman had three assistants. One witnessed her during her time of tranquility. One saw her in her vanity, and the other one saw her in her wrenched state. So similar, Moses saw Israel in their dignity and peace, but he said, Eicha, how can I do it by myself? Isaiah saw Israel in their vanity, and he said, Eicha, how can it be that the faithful woman has become a harlot? The vanity. And Jeremiah saw them in their wrenched, and he said, Eicha, oh, how can it be that a city once teeming with people sits in isolation? And today we read all three Eichas, which is unique. We read the Eicha of the Torah, we read the Eicha of the Haftorah, and now we just read the Eicha tonight. These three situations do not have to be in different generations. They can also happen in the same time, in different places throughout the world. There are Jewish communities today in situations like Moses saw, in dignity and peace. There are. There are places in the world where the Jewish communities are vain. And then there are places in the world of which the Jewish communities are the Eicha of Jeremiah. How can it be that a city once teeming with people sits in isolation? And the Rebbe once said that the question of Moses could be the question of every single Jewish child. Every person, the Rebbe said, should ask themselves, Eicha, number one, how can I do it alone? I cannot do it alone. The three most difficult words in the English language is I need help. The three most difficult words to reach out to someone and ask for help. I need help. How can I do it alone? How will I draw the strength to fulfill my purpose, my mission in this world? And the Rebbe answers and says that just as God gave Moses the strength to fulfill his mission, God gives us the strength and the power to fulfill our mission. We are a shaliach of God, as Moses was a shaliach of God. And then the Rebbe quotes the Midrash, which says, if you had been worthy, you would read the Torah portion of Eicha. But now that you have not been worthy, you will read the Eicha of Lamentations. The Rebbe says this is the Torah's message. In order to eliminate the reason that leads to the Eicha of Lamentations that we just read, we have to observe the Eicha of Moses. We must lead ourselves and those around us in the spirit of Moses, in the spirit of the Torah. We have to be the one that can ask for help and the one that can give the help when it's asked for. It takes two. One of the great questions of theology: what's harder, the person who gives or the person who receives? To ask for help, according to our tradition, according to Judaism, is harder than giving the help. And so here we are. One of the questions that I asked today in my sermon is, why do we need Tisha B'Av if we've had 22 months of Tisha B'Av? Why do we need a day to mark it?
It's 22 months,
Almost.
like 22 verses in each chapter.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, almost. We're very close. Why do we need it today? We need it because this is our moment to be able to sit. Somehow, and it's not our fault. We're survivors, and we're the children of survivors, and we're the grandchildren of survivors. It's not our fault. It's hard for us to sit with this pain. It's hard for us to experience Tisha B'Av because it triggers us. But we're the first generation that can do it. We're the first generation in history that in our lifetime, most of us, I know there's some here that have, but most of us in this room have never had to worry where our next meal is coming from. We may complain about it, but we never had to worry about it. And because of that, we have the ability for the first time in Jewish history to actually sit with this and to figure out the solution, to figure out what are we going to do? What does the world of Mashiach look like? The Rebbe said one day, Mashiach is here, open your eyes. It's always boggled my mind. What does that mean? Mashiach is here, open your eyes. I don't see it. I remember as a child hearing the story of Rabbi Zusha of Anapol, that somebody once came to Rabbi Zusha of Anapol and said, Mashiach is here. So he opened the window and smelled outside. And he said, no, Mashiach's not here. And they asked, why did Rabbi Zusha have to smell outside? And they said, because in Rabbi Zusha's room, Mashiach was always there. So he had to smell outside to see if Mashiach came. So maybe I thought in the Rebbe's world, in the Rebbe's room, Mashiach was always there. So the Rebbe was saying, open your eyes. That's very nice. It's very poetic. But I think that our ability, and this is a perfect day because this is the day of Mashiach. Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av. According to tradition, Mashiach comes on Tisha B'Av, right? Mashiach is coming today. So we have the ability to experience what a Mashiach world would look like. What does it look like? What is the era of Mashiach? What does that peace look like? What does it look like to be able to sit and not be triggered by those things that trigger us? To have peace within ourselves. If you want peace in the world, we need peace within ourselves first. What does that look like, the peace in ourselves? It's very hard. I know, I can see. It's very hard to sit here. Low chair. I'm talking. How long? You're thinking to yourself, how long is the rabbi going to talk already? Come on. I don't want to be, I'm very Canadian. I want to be respectful. How long is he going to be talking for? Maybe, come on, it's already, it's late. It's past my bedtime. I'm not going to get up in the middle of a talk. I know what you're thinking. But this is the opportunity to fight that trigger, the trigger of, and we always, and it's within us. We're always, I want to go somewhere else. I want to leave this space. I have somewhere else to be. For the first time in history, we have nowhere else to be than in this moment be able to experience a space. And that's what this exists for. It's for us to be able to sit and to wonder and to dream and to ask, what does the world that we want look like? What is the world that I want to live in and be in? What does it look like? And how can I be able to heal myself in order to be able to get into that world? What are your thoughts? What do you think?
It's really big questions.
Yeah.
Pretty tired. I don't have an answer.
What about just, instead of trying to think of it as a big question, just one element of the question, one noticing of the question? What's coming up for you? What does this question conjure for you? So instead of starting to big up you can't start big, you start small. Like if you leave today, if I leave this moment with these candles burning, with being able to be in this space, experiencing Tisha B'Av, what is one nugget? What is one moment, one something that I can take with me and say, I leave this room and this moment is different. It's different. I take something with me and I hold it and it becomes mine. One thing.
What is my purpose?
What is my purpose? Okay. Asking yourself the existential question. Maybe if I can help you reframe it, like the Alter Rebbe reframed it. When somebody asked the Alter Rebbe, he went to the Alter Rebbe with his list of what he needs. The Rebbe said, I see all of what you need, but I don't see where you write, what am I needed for? So part of that purpose is asking, what am I needed for? In the words of the Alter Rebbe. Okay. Any other, somebody wrote here, faith in Hashem, that Mashiach can come today. I love that, faith. It has been the story of our people. We don't give that story enough credit, that faith has been what has carried us. Thank you. And for those of you on the Zoom, you can write it in the comments and I'll read them out. Any other nuggets? So quiet tonight. I'm so happy that you're sitting with us. We can just, I'm happy. For me, the best nugget would be if we can just sit in silence for it. I know that's hard for the Jews. We're never good at sitting in silence.
I don't understand the purpose of Tisha B'Av. I don't see like what is right. Like it's been 1950 years that we're doing the same thing over and over again. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
So what's the?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see it.
He says, I don't see the purpose of Tisha B'Av. It's been 1950 years just around that we've been doing the same thing every single year and nothing changed. I think that is a great question to sit with. I mean, I can give you a spoon-fed answer, but then I'm spoon-feeding my process and not allowing you to do your, but asking. You see, that's one of the beautiful elements of Judaism. I'm not trying to deflect this question. I really mean it. There's some questions that we have to sit with and ask ourselves. And Tisha B'Av is the perfect opportunity to ask the question. It's a question I've asked. So I know the feeling of like, what is the point? What is it with nothing's changed? Here we are. We literally can read this and it feels like it's the same story all over again. So just be able to sit with that. Somebody wrote here, healing those spaces that feel dark. Again, asking that beautiful question. Is darkness a creation of its own, or is it the absence of light? For us, within Jewish theology, it's the absence of light. Darkness does not exist. That's the power of the candle. If you light the candle in a dark room, the darkness never existed. There's no proof there was ever darkness when you light the candle. Thank you. Okay, at least one or two more before we conclude. Please.
When I watched one of the hostages, which I don't remember his name, unfortunately, when he flew back from captivity over the Gaza Strip, he looked down and he could not believe what he saw. And the first thing he said, when I feel better, I will rebuild my kibbutz. And it was shocking for me, envy actually, how a person like this comes back from captivity and all what he can think is to rebuild. And I think for me, Tisha B'Av is always the idea that no matter what will happen to us, we will rebuild.
That's amazing. Yeah. Hashivenu Hashem elacha v'nashuva. Yeah. It's beautiful. It's the rebuilding is such an integral part of and I think we often get sucked into, and to David, I'm just kind of feeding your process a little bit, but sometimes we get sucked into the mourning, and we get sucked into the ether of the pain, but not thinking about the rebuilding. I think, right, Rabbi Akiva in the story laughing, when he sees the fox going through the temple, because he sees this is the first step of rebuilding. There's a beautiful part besides the faith that we spoke about, but the rebuilding is such an integral part of this narrative. Thank you. One last one. Yeah.
But what comes to mind is Dr. Carmela is I just feel sad that we're constantly in the position of having to rebuild, and after October 7th, like, I just don't feel that the world is safe again. And here we are again. And, I'm not somebody who walks around fearful, but in the grand scheme of things, we're not in a good position. And we're doing it again. I mean, thank God we have the strength to do it, but it's like exhausting.
Yeah. The strength. I take from you the strength. It's an amazing thing about our people, is the strength to rebuild, to do it again, over and over, to have this hostage that is literally coming from captivity to freedom, and his first thought is, let's rebuild. It doesn't make any sense. And I think of your mother, who remembering, and all of the other survivors that did not wear Hitler on their back, as she said it so beautifully. They came and rebuilt. And we have so much today. We sit in a certain, especially here in Montreal, the survivors built the community here in many, many ways. And that ability to not live in the survival and in the angst and in the pain, and to be able to take that pain and channel it into rebuilding, I think we have a lot to learn from them. And this is now,
Even the painful time where you mourn somebody, the first thing you do is Kaddish, where you say David Kaddish. That's rebuilding your life immediately in the notion of there is hope, there will be a way to get out of this rebuild.
Yeah. I've spoken just recently. I spoke to a non-Jew who said that they envy our mourning rituals. They wish that they had Shiva. They wish they had Kaddish. They wish that they had this. And maybe this is right. Tisha B'Av, it's a mourning ritual for us. And these rituals have kept us going. Yeah. Wow. Sarah, any thoughts?
Wow.
Anyone else? Ram, no? Sarah, Leah, anything?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for. We're not supposed to greet each other tonight. There's a couple different traditions. One of them is not greeting each other. We're supposed to say thank you, but it's yeah, exactly. Well, that's what it is. It's a collective mourning. It's a collective mourning. And so I'm not saying anything, but you know what we all intend and mean, and we should be able to go from here and be able to go into a beautiful era, an era of peace, an era of Mashiach, an era of that we've been waiting for, that our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents dreamt of, and that we can actually realize in our lifetime.
It's not over yet.